Were 406, and we had the description of one of these spirits who are the followers of Saturn. Next, Chemos, the obscene dread of Mob's sons from Error and Nebo, and the wild of southmost Abiram in Hesbon and Horonim, Son's realm, beyond the flowery dale of Sebma, clad with vines, and Elel to the asphaltic pool. Now next, first we talk about Moloch. After Moloch there is Chemos. He is dreaded. He is worshipped by people in the fear, and he is worshipped from these are the names of the places that he is worshipped in different places at a vast area. So all these places of names of places of hills and deserts and mountains, they show that he has been worshipped at all these different places. Poer, his other name was Poer. When he enticed Israel in Shittim on their march from Nile to do him wanton rites, which caused them woe, yet thence his lustful urges he enlarged. Now his other name was Por, and he convinced, he made the people of Israel to follow him in the licentious ceremonies, to do that. But these licentious ceremonies, they brought woe and suffering to the Israeli community because of following him. And this second spirit, the fallen angel, he had his place even to that hill of scandal by the grove of Moloch, homicide, lust hard by hate. So they dwell on the same hell till good Josiah drove them thence to hell. So till the time that Josiah drove them to hell. So murder and hate, they were placed side by side. So first Moloch lived on that hell, and later on Chemos also had the dwelling place on the same hill. With these came they who from the bordering flood of old Euphrates to the brook that parts. So there were others also with them who had come from the Euphrates, is in Urdu as we call it दरियाए फरात के उस हिस्से से वो लोग जो है वो यहाँ पर आए थे. Egypt from Syrian ground had general names of Balaam and Ashtaro, those male, these feminine. So from Egypt and Syria, there were people from there, and these two, they had their names Balaam and Ashtara, and one was female and male, and the other was male. And for spirits, when they please, can either sex assume. They can assume either of the sex. Since they were the angels, they could assume any of the sexes as they liked, whether they wanted to be male or female, according to their wish. They could assume that sex or both, and sometimes even they could change. If one was male at the beginning, later on they might assume the female sex. So these spirits, they adopted the sex according to the work that required the particular sex. So according to the work, according to the spirit, the feelings, they would assume that particular sex. Not tied or manacled with joint or limb, nor confounded on the brittle strength of bones, like cumbrous flesh, but in what shape they choose. So it is all the description of these spirits, the assuming that in what human shape could they appear. They could appear in any of the shape they liked, either as male or female or both, as they wished. They did not have any boundaries to this, and they could be They could be fettered, they could enter the limbs of a man also, like cumbrous flesh, like the heavy flesh, but in what shape they chose, delighted or condensed, bright or obscure, can execute their airy purposes. Airy purposes, the purpose that they liked it through the air. They used air to fulfill the पर्पस, जो भी वो मकासद हासिल करना चाहते थे उसके लिए वो हवा को इस्तेमाल कर सकते थे. एंड वर्क्स ऑफ लव एंड एनमिटी फुलफिल. एंड व्हाट वर दोज वर्क्स? दे कुड डू दी वर्क्स ऑफ लव एंड एनमिटी. वो किसी भी तरह का काम जो है वो कर सकते थे बाय यूजिंग एयर. For those, the race of Israel oft forsook their living strength and unfrequented left his righteous altar, bowing lowly down to bestial gods, for which their heads as low. So what happened? These the race of the Israel, these Israelis, they for their strength, they changed their altar. They left the altar of the true God for the beasts. Instead of worshipping their true God, they started worshipping the beasts, for which their heads as low, bowed down in battle, sunk before the spear of despicable foes. So because of which they had hung a picture of the God in their temple, and it fell down, and because of that the people were humiliated. With these in troop came Astrore, whom the Phoenicians call. Now Phoenicians, they called, then after that in these fallen angels there was Astrore. The Phoenicians called it Astrate, the queen of heaven, with crescent horns. So it bore crescent horns. It was a semicircle of the horns, like a half moon. So that is why it is said crescent horns, like the half moon. To whose bright image nightly by the moon Sidonian virgins paid their vows and songs in Sion, also not unsung, where stood her temple on the offensive mountain built by that uxorious king, whose heart, though large, beguiled by far idolatresses, fell. Now what happened? The Sidonian, the Phoenicians, they sang, they vowed in the name of Astrora, and they sang love songs for him, and his temple was situated on the mountain, and it was built by the king who was very excessively fond of females, and he was indulged in that all the times. And he used to persuade them, he used to seduce them to idols foul. So he allured them, he used them for his purpose. Tammuz came next behind. So after that, so all these angels are, there is a description of all these angels, the fallen angels. We are chiefly concerned with the descriptions of Saturn, Beelzebub, and after that the overall description is of greater importance as compared to the individual importance, because these all descriptions, they contain the references from history, they contain the references from literature, from classical literature, and from the literature of the people who have earlier written the poems, and some historical references are also there. Some stories probably from Bible are also there, because we find all these stories in Quran. Some of these stories in Quran also, like the story of the Pharaoh and the Egyptians and Israelis. Some of these are there in Islam as well, because the basic source is the same. And this is the reason that Milton announced at the beginning that his theme is of universal nature. It is concerned with the humankind. It is not concerned with one tribe or with one religion or with one geography. It is concerned with all the mankind. whose Tammuz came next behind, whose annual wound in Lebanon allured the Syrian damsels to lament his fate in amorous deities all the summer's day, while smooth Adonis from his native rock. So what happened? Tammuz, we have the long description of it. It is said that the people in Lebanon, the damsels in Syria, they lament, they feel sorry for his fate, because every year the river on a summer day, his wound of love, it gets renewed, and the ran purple to the sea, supposed with blood of Tammuz yearly wounded. So what happened, that wound, it gets freshed up every year, and the water of the sea, it turns purple because of the color of that wound of Tammuz. The love-tale infected Sion's daughters with like heat, whose wanton passions in the sacred porch as Kyle saw when by the vision led. So what happened, the love tale of these Sion daughters, the girls living in that place, they had that passion of love. They had because of that because of Ezekiel, when by the vision led, his eyes surveyed the dark idolatries of alienated Judah. So alienated is fallen away from God, somebody who has gone far off from the right path. Next came one who mourned in earnest when the captive ark maimed his brute image, head and hands lopped off in his own temple on the Grancel edge. So on the threshold, what happened? The lopped off is the cut off, the ark of the God. There is a brutal image of the head and hands on his temple, where he fell flat and shamed his worshippers. So they had held that they were hanging that image of the God in the temple. It fell flat, it fell on the ground, and it ashamed the worshippers that the image of the God had fallen down. Dagon, the name of the God was Dagon, who was a sea monster, upward man and downward fish. And the appearance of Dagon was like half of it was a monster, and the other half was like a fish, and it was a sea monster. Yet had his temple high reared in Azotus. So his temple was raised in the Azotus, dreaded through the coast of Palestine. So people in Palestine, in Gath, in Ascalon, in Ekron, in Gaza, frontier bounds, they were all afraid of its temple. It was raised in Azotus. Him followed Rimmon. The Rimmons, they followed him, whose delightful seat was fair Damascus, on the fertile banks of Abana and Pharpar, lucid streams. He also against the house of God was bold. So he was also one of those people who turned against the true God, who seduced the people, who deceived the people, who persuaded the people to not to follow the true God and to worship these false gods and monsters. A leper, once he lost and gained a king. There was a leper, but they worshipped him, but with the passage of time he was able to cure his leprosy, and he gained a king. He got hold of a king whose name was Ahaz. He was a Scottish conqueror. He was a foolish person who agreed to whatever he said, whom he drew God's altar to disparage and displace. Disparage is to insult. So he used this king. He found an advocate, a supporter in the shape of this king, and he used him to alter, to insult the temple of the God. For one of Syrian mode whereon to burn his odious offerings and adore the gods. So Odious is the hateful host. So they presented through his help, they presented their hateful offerings on the temple of the god, and they in this way they showed the love of God, whom he had vanquished. He had vanquished, he had conquered, because he had conquered the God in a way that he was able to persuade the people to leave him and to offer the false things. After these appeared a crew who under names of old renown. So after these there is a whole crew. There are a number of spirits whose names were earlier known as Orisis, Isis, Horus, and their train. Train is the people who were in service of these spirits, or we can say their attendants, with monstrous shapes and sorceries abused fanatic Egypt and her priests to seek. They were huge, they were monsters like, and these superstitious Egyptians and their priests to seek their wandering gods disguised in brutish forms rather than human. So they tried to find out their gods by wandering out here and there instead of human. Nor did Israel escape the infection. They also became corrupt. They could not even resist this corruption when their borrowed gold composed the calf of Oreb. So it is a reference to the Israel in the times of the prophet मूसेस. हज़रत मूसा अलैहिस्सलाम के वक्त में जब हज़रत मूसा जो है वो अल्लाह ताला के अहकामात के लिए गए हुए थे, इबादत की गर्ज से गए हुए थे, तो लोगों ने गोल्ड जमा किया. सो दिस इज़ द सेम रेफरेंस हियर कि उन्होंने गोल्ड जमा करके एक काल्फ बनाया था. तो इस तरह के और भी काम हुए थे. एक दो बार और भी जो है वो किंग्स ने इस तरीके की जो ज़्यादती है या इस तरह की जो रेबेलियन है वो करने की कोशिश की थी. सो इट वाज नॉट ओनली इसराइलीज हु डिड दिस. फर्स्ट देयर वर इसराइलीज हु मेड अ काल्फ आउट ऑफ गोल्ड एंड द रेबल किंग डबल्ड दैट. उसने वो काम उससे दो गुना ज्यादा कर दिया था. इन बेथेल एंड इन डैन उसने दो बार उसको ज्यादा किया, और एक ऑक्स जो है उसको बना के इन द फॉर्म ऑफ बेथेल एंड इन द फॉर्म ऑफ डैन ही डबल्ड दैट सिन ऑफ मेकिंग अ काल्फ. और वो खुदा को उस एनिमल फॉर्म में तलाश करने की या किसी मॉन्स्टर फॉर्म में तलाश करने की कोशिश कर रहे थे. लाइकनिंग हिज मेकर टू द ग्रेज्ड ऑक्स, Jehovah, who in one night when he passed from Egypt marching equaled with one stroke both her firstborn and all her bleating gods. Belial came, he had made what? A bull fed on grass. He doubled that sin by making another animal of the same kind instead of God. And Jehovah, he had gone for one night, he passed by Egypt, and equal with one stroke he reduced them to the same level, both for her firstborn and all her bleating gods. The one who were born for the first time or the ones that were created again, he had turned them equal. Belial came last. So finally there is Belial, then whom a spirit more lewd. He was also licentious, fell not from heaven, he had not fallen from heaven, or more gross to love, vice for itself. To him no temple stood or altar smoked. So for this Belial, for this last spirit, there is no temple or no altar situated in this earth, yet who more oft than he in temples and at altars. But he is found, he is present in all the temples and altars. When the priest turns atheist, जब एक priest जो एक religious person है, जब वो ही atheist बन जाता है, तो ये हर उस temple, हर इस altar में मौजूद होता है. As did Eli's son, who filled with lust and violence the house of God. So as the Eli's son, he did. So atheist, the one who does not believe in God, who believes that is there any God or not? He questions that. So a non-believer. So he is present in all those places. As Alison, who turned the temple of God into a place which was full of lust and violence. In courts and palaces, he also reigns. He is also found not only in the temples where priests turn into atheists. He is also present in courts and palaces. He also reigns, and in luxurious cities where the noise of riots ascends above their loftiest towers, and injury and outrage, and when night darkens the street. So he is found in palaces and courts. He is present there. He is present in the cities also, where the noise of the cities is, it exceeds, it goes out of the towers. And when night darkens the streets, then wander forth the sons of Belial. So what happens when it is all dark, the darkness prevails everywhere? The sons of Belial, they start wandering around in the streets of the cities, flown with insolence and wine, and they swagger around in as if they have taken wine. जिस तरह से कोई शराब पीकर जो है वो swagger कर रहा होता है, वो ठीक से चल नहीं पाते, उसके कदम लड़खड़ाते हैं. So बिल्कुल उसी स्टेट में ये भी streets में जो है घूमते हैं. Witness the streets of Sodom, and then night in Jeba, when the hospitable door exposed to matron to avoid worse rape. So here the examples are as witness, as the evidence, the streets of Sodom and the nights in Jeba, they have been presented here as the examples where the hospitable door, where the matron in order to avoid the adverse crime, she had presented herself. These were the prime in order and might. So the description of the fallen angels that we have talked about so far, they were supreme in order. They were the chief rebel angels in order. In order means in their rank and in their strength also. The rest were long to tell, so there were too many to talk about them, and the rest were long to tell, that it would take too much time and too much energy it would take, because they are numerous, they are infinite, वो ना खत्म होने वाले हैं, because we have just talked about their similes that describe their number, that they cover the river Nile as if darkness has spread all over, as if it was night. So we cannot talk about all of them here, though far renowned. The Ionian gods, the Ionian are the Greek gods of Javan's issue held. So gods yet confessed later than heaven and earth, their boasted parents. So they are the Greek gods who are the offsprings of the heaven and the earth. Titan, heaven's firstborn. So the Titan race is the first one who was born in heaven, with his enormous brood and birthright seized. So enormous brood here refers to the innumerable children. By younger Saturn, he from mightier Jove and his own and Rhea's son. So he was the son of Jove and Rhea, like measure found. So Jove usurping reign, he held that. He was the one who held the reign of that place, by that land, by authority. Then first in Crete and Ida non, thence on this snowy top, that he held his reign in Crete and in Ida, and also on the mountains that were covered with the snow. Of cold Olympus ruled the middle air, their highest heaven, or on the Delphian cliff. So the Olympus, it ruled the middle air, it ruled in the middle, their highest heaven, which was so Olympus was the one who was ruling on heaven, or on the mount of Delphi, or on Dodona, or through all the bounds of Doric land, or who with Saturn old fled over Adria to the Hesperian fields, or o'er the Celtic Rome, the utmost isles. So he held the land in all these places, in the highest heaven, in the Delphian mountain, in the Dodona, in the far off lands of Doric, and in the Saturn, in the Hesperian fields. So utmost isles, here it refers to Britain, so it includes all those the lands of Italy and Greece and Rome and England, so all these places. So Olympus, the reign of Olympus, it extended far and near at different all these different places. All these and more came flocking, but with looks downcast and damp. So all these they came with, they were looking down with humility, with the misery, with the suffering, and they were depressed. Yet such wherein they had such an appearance, obscure some glimpse of joy. And obscure is dim. They had the dim delight in them. Not exactly delight, because they were not delighted at all there. It was because of the hope that they could have because they have been called upon by their leader, and that gave them a little inspiration. Because of that to have found their chief not in despair, to have found themselves not lost. So there was the slightest, very dim joy was there, because now they could realize that they were not lost. They had not lost everything, and they are not going to suffer in this eternal misery forever. In loss itself, which on his countenance cast like doubtful hue. Doubtful hue refers to the joy mixed with despair. वो जो मिक्स्ड फीलिंग्स हैं, जिसमें कि थोड़ी सी खुशी है और थोड़ी सी सैडनेस भी है, वो दोनों तरह की अब मिक्स्ड फीलिंग्स हैं उनकी, क्योंकि वो उनके ऊपर एक मिजरी, एक एफ्लिक्शन है, एक इटर्नल पेन है. वो उसके अलावा दे हैव स्टार्टेड एन अनएंडिंग वॉर अगेंस्ट ऑलमाइटी. तो उस दोनों को, क्योंकि दे आर ऑल combined together अपने उन सारे acts की वजह से, because they have been given permission by the Almighty to start this war against Almighty, to take this revenge. So Saturn also appears to be his face, his shape also appears to be half mixed with joy and despair. He is sad as well as he is delighted, but his wanted pride soon recollecting his high words that bore semblance of worth, not substance, gently raised their fainting courage and dispelled their fears. So what Saturn basically wanted to do, he wanted to raise their courage, their hope. The pride, they had a pride, the customary pride, एक जो traditional उनका pride था जो हमेशा से उनके साथ था, he wanted to restore that, उसको वापस लाना चाह रहा था. And how he was doing that, they did not have any hopes or pride. हकीकत में उनके पास उसको रिस्टोर करने के लिए कुछ नहीं था, लेकिन सेटन, एज वी डिस्कस्ड अर्लियर ऑल्सो, दैट सेटन की जो स्पीचेस हैं, दे आर सुपर्ब, दे हैव गॉट एक्सेलेंट हेरोइक क्वालिटीज. तो वो जो हाई वर्ड्स हैं अपनी स्पीचेस के, वो उन वर्ड्स को यूज़ करते हुए उनको एक्सप्लॉइट कर रहा है, उनके थ्रू उनको, उनके स्पिरिट्स को रिकलेक्ट कर रहा है, उनकी जो लॉस्ट एनर्जी है उसको रिस्टोर करने की कोशिश कर रहा है. दैट बोर semblance of worth, no substance, gently raised their fainting courage. Their courage was fainting because of that misery. So he is trying to kindly raise their courage and dispel their fears, and he wanted to free them. He wanted to free them of the anxiety, of the fear of suffering in that misery. Then a straight commands that all the warlike sound. So what happened? Straight command at once there started. There was the order of the warlike sound. So this is the sound of the kind of music that encourages the soldiers and the warriors. Of trumpets loud and clarions be upreared. his mighty standard. So what happened? Because that type of music, it encourages, it increases your morale, and it encourages you to get ready for the battle, for the fight. His mighty standard, here it is the standard of the flag of the Saturn. His mighty standard, that proud honor claimed, as well as his right, a cherub tall, who forthwith from the glittering stuff unfurled. So they displayed the flag, the standard of the Saturn. So a tall cherub is the angel. So a tall angel, he displayed the flag of Saturn. The imperial ensign. Imperial is the heavenly, the symbol, the heavenly symbol, which full high advanced. It reached all its height, shone like a meteor streaming to the wind. So it reached its height, and it was meteor is the shooting star. It appeared like a shooting star, and it was streaming with the wind, and it was displayed with gems and golden luster, rich emblazed. Emblazed is the decorated. It was all decorated fully with the with precious stones, and with the golden luster, with the bright gold. Seraphic arms and trophies. So trophic is the emblem of victory, and there were different types of shields and trophies, all the while sonorous metal blowing martial sound. So sonorous metal, here it refers to the high sounding, the all types of military sounds, the sounds related to the march past and the army and soldiers. So every type of sound which could be produced with the help of metal, which has the very high pitch, very high volume, they were all blown. All types of metals were blown to arouse the spirit, to motivate, to encourage the fallen angels. At which the universal host upsent a shout that tore hell's conveys, and beyond frightened the reign of chaos and old night. Universal is all belonging to the all universe, the entire universe. Host upsent a shout, frightened the reign of chaos and old night. So there was a shout from the Lord, and it brought a frightening sound. It brought a horrifying and scaring voice in that vast chaos. All in a moment through the gloom were seen 10,000 banners rise into the air. So in that sense, the atmosphere, the climate of the hell, it is all gloomy, it is of despair. So it was seen in that in a moment, it was seen that there were 10,000 banners, they were risen in the air, and those banners, they were with orient colors waving. So they had the bright colors, and they were all waving. With them rose a forest huge of spears. So there were spears, a large, so forest huge of spears. So there were large number of spears with them, and thronging helms. Helms is the helmets. So this is all the preparations. First the banners appeared, then the spears appeared, and then the helms. Helms is the helmet, the protectionary measures that soldiers usually wear, appeared, and serried shields in thick array. Serried shields, here serried is the locked together. So the shields were also there along with helmets. So helmets and shields for the protection of the warriors, the soldiers, they also appeared in thick array, that they were present with everybody, thick array that everybody had it, of depth immeasurable. Anon they move in perfect phalanx to the Dorian mood. In a perfect phalanx is heavily, so very heavily they moved from there. They started marching like the soldiers, like the warriors, of flutes and soft recorders, such as raised to height of noblest temper heroes sold, arming to battle and instead of rage, deliberate valor, breath firm and unmoved, with dread of death to flight or foul retreat. Now this is their condition, that when they are ready, they are marching for the, they are getting ready for going to the battle, for starting that. And instead of rage, what do they have? They have the deliberate, they have the steady valor, they have the strength, and they are firm, they are unmoved, because usually whenever you are ready for going to the war, there is a bit of fear of death, so that is not found, and they are not afraid of retrieving back. They do not they will not retreat from that. So they, at this point, they have that courage, that energy, and they are firm, and they are their intentions are unchangeable, and they nor wanting power to mitigate and swag with solemn touches. So solemn touches are the strain. So they do not want, they do not lack power to lessen the troubled thoughts and chase anguish and doubt and fear and sorrow and pain from mortal or immortal minds. Thus they breathing united force with fixed thought. So they are all united and they are immortal. So from mortal they have become now immortal, because they are just spirits, they are minds and spirits, and the minds and spirits, they can never perish. So they are breathing, they are united, they are all of the same kind, and with mixed thought, that they had the mingling thought of preparing for that battle. Moved on in silence to soft pipes that charmed. So soft pipes here, it's the music of the in which they started moving towards their leader. So they started moving in silence towards the leader in that music that was blown for them. Their painful steps over the burned soil. So they started taking their steps on the burned soil. They were still in hell. They were getting ready for the war on the call of their leader. And now advanced in view. Now they advanced in view. They stand a horrid front of dreadful length and dazzling arms in guise of warriors, old with ordered spear and shield. So what happened? They were all ready for the battle, for this great war. A horrid front of dreadful length. Dreadful length, they were innumerable, they were infinite, and they had the dazzling arms. Dazzling are something that surprises you, that makes you bewildered, and they were having they were dressed as if they were warriors, and they were carrying their spears and their shields with them, awaiting what command their mighty chief had to impose. They were waiting for the order of their leader. He, through the armed files, darts his experienced eye, and soon traversed the whole battalion, views their order due, their visages and stature as of gods. So they had lined up. They were all ready with their banners and their helmets and shields and spears, everything with them. So they had all their weapons, and now they were ready, and they were waiting for the command, for the order of their leader, and who would direct his order, who would direct their actions, and who Saturn, he cast his experienced eyes on them, and he looked across the battalion, across all these warriors and soldiers, and their order due in which they were standing, and he could see their faces and stature, and they appeared like gods, as we discussed earlier also, that they were, since they were angels, so they were greater, they were more like they were unlike human beings. वो ह्यूमन बींग्स और गॉड्स के दरमियान की कोई चीज़ थे. सो देयर उनके जो फीचर्स थे और जो उनका स्टेचर था एज ऑफ गॉड्स, कि जिस तरह के गॉड्स के होते हैं, क्योंकि वो एंजल्स थे. देयर नंबर लास्ट ही sons, and now his heart distends with pride and hardening in his strength glories, for never since created man met such embodied foes as named with these could merit more than that small infantry. So their number last he sums. Even the last one, he told them their numbers, and now in his heart he had pride and he had the strength, because when you have lots of force, when you have somebody with you to work with, you feel great pride in that. Now when he saw at that battalion of fallen angels who were his followers, when he cast a look on them, उसका जो हार्ट था, इन हिज हार्ट ही वॉज प्राउड कि मैंने इतनी बटालियन जमा कर ली है. आई एम सो पावरफुल एंड स्ट्रांग विद द हेल्प ऑफ ऑल दिस, बिकॉज दे आर वेटिंग फॉर माई ऑर्डर एंड दे आर गोइंग टू फॉलो माई कमांड्स. तो इसको एक डिग्निटी, एक ग्लोरी की फीलिंग्स हो रही थी. एंड नेवर सिंस क्रिएटेड मैन, दैट मैन हु he could never collect such forces, and even these the race of pygmies, it could the number of those followers, they were greater than the race of the pygmies, warred on by cranes, who were warred on by the cranes. Through all the giant brood of Phlegra with the heroic race were joined that fought at Thebes and Ilium, on each side mixed with auxiliary gods, and what resounds in fable or romance or author's son. Now he is giving the comparison of these followers. He says that they were greater in number than the ones that have been discussed in the peninsula of Phalanx and Macedonia, and even in Troy. These are the references to the classical literature. He says that the soldiers who fought in Thebes and in Troy, or even the Arthur's son, the warriors that Arthur's son had that Arthur had with him in a fable or a romance, his battalion is greater than all those incidents. के हिस्ट्री में जितने भी ग्रेट जो एपिक्स हैं, वो कह रहे हैं कि उनके पास जितनी बटालियन थे उससे कहीं ज़्यादा इसकी बटालियन थी. Now once again making a comparison to any ordinary epic also, that he once again tells the stature of his, or the grandeur of his theme, that it is not related to any particular region. और उसका उसने किस तरीके से मुकाबला किया है कि उनके पास जो बटालियन या आर्मी होती थी, वो ट्रॉय की या थेबीज में जो आर्मी थी या ट्रॉय में जो आर्मी थी, या जो किसी भी फेबल या रोमांस में जितनी आर्मी होती थी, इसमें जो आर्मी उसने यूज़ की है ये उससे बहुत ज़्यादा है. सो द थीम दैट ही इज़ यूजिंग इज़ यूनिवर्सल. सो वंस अगैन ही सपोर्ट्स बाय कंपेयरिंग दीज, बाय गिविंग दीज कंपैरिजंस, ही सपोर्ट्स द पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू दैट हिज theme is universal in nature and it deals with all humankind. Begirt with British and Armoric knights and all who since baptized or infidel jousted in Espramont or Montalban, Damasco or Morocco or Trebizond, or whom Biserta sent from Afric shore. So all the Christians or non-Christians, or the ones who are titled, or the ones who were once the monarchs or who have been the kings, even they could not prepare any equivalent battalion or army when Charlemagne with all his peerage fell by Fontarabia. Thus far these beyond compare of mortal powers, yet observed their dread commander, he above the rest in shape and gesture proudly eminent. So once again, even Charlemagne, he could not prepare such a battalion of knights and soldiers, so it was above them all. It is beyond the powers of mortal human beings, it is beyond the power of any mortal to collect such a battalion of army. So again, in all these lines he has been comparing the strength of his battalion, the number of soldiers, the infiniteness of his battalion, कि उसके पास जितने लोग हैं, जितनी battalion है, जो soldiers, warriors हैं उसके पास, they are more they are greater as compared to any incident in the history. So he says that it is beyond the mortal power to collect any such number of people. And this thing was observed by Saturn, who was their commander, and he was above them all in shape and in gesture, and he was eminent as far he was the one who was distinguished from them. And how was he distinguished? He stood like a tower. His form had yet not lost all her original brightness, nor appeared less than archangel ruined, and the excess of glory obscured, as when the sun, new risen, looks through the horizontal mystery air. So he stood like a tower, and his original, he had not lost all his heavenly bliss and all that brightness. Because he was still an archangel. He was a fallen angel. He was still an angel. Though he has been fallen, he has been expelled from heaven, but he was still an angel. So the excess of that glory, it has dimmed. It has that glory, it had become dimmed, but it had not completely ceased. And it appeared. Now once again a simile is used here to tell the brightness of Saturn, that it is similar to the brightness as if the newly risen sun is there, and we could see the dim through the mist of the air, we could see its dim light shone off his beams, or from behind the moon in dim eclipse disastrous twilight sheds on half the nations, and with fear of change perplexes monarchs. So what happened again? The brightness of Saturn, that heavenly bliss, that heavenly celestial light has not all diminished from his body. It is still there, but it has dimmed. It has been dimmed, and it appears now as if the beams, the rays of the sun has just risen, and we could see its dim rays through the mist of the air, and from behind the moon, as if during the eclipse the sun is shown when it is all covered by when we cannot see its all rays, but by having passed through the moon. Darkened so, yet shone above them all the archangel. So it appeared that type of darkness prevailed on the archangel, and still it was shown, or it appeared above them all. But his face, deep scars of thunder had entrenched, and care sat on his faded cheek. So what happened? Care is the suffering or the worry. So that trouble, that anxiety that he had in mind, that was reflected on his face also, that there was a deep scar of thunder, that was there were traces of thunder, of the wrath of God on his face also, and there were some it was reflected, that anxiety was reflected on his cheeks also, and these cheeks are faded because they did not have that shine of heavenly bliss. And under brows of dauntless courage, under his eyebrows he had the dauntless, it was unfearful courage and considerate pride, and there was considerable pride in him, waiting revenge. That what was that pride for? It wanted to, he was waiting to take revenge. Cruel eyes, his eyes appeared cruel, but cast signs of remorse and passion to behold. But there were signs of remorse, there were signs of pity, and and strong feelings were seen in them. The fellows of his crime, the followers rather, for other ones beheld in bliss. So the followers of his crime, that they were united with him in this hour of misery, now they were his followers, and they they joined him, they were united with him in the hour of bliss when they were living in heaven, condemned forever now to have their lot in pain. Now once again they are joined together in their to suffer in the eternal misery, in this pain. Millions of spirits for his fault immersed. Now it was his fault, the Satan who was wrong, who rebelled against God, and all these millions of spirits, they were going to face this misery because of him, of heaven and from eternal splendors flung. So all that bliss and heaven that was taken from them because of the rebellious attitude, because of the act, because of the fault of the Satan, all these spirits, they were also deprived of heaven. For his word, yet faithful, how they stood. Now he had revolted against the authority of God. He was the one who did not like it. Still, all these fallen angels, they remained faithful to him. Their glory withered, their glory, their brightness, that had finished, that was taken away from them, as when heaven's fire hath scarced the forest oaks or mountain pines, with synced top their stately growth, though bare stands on the blasted heath, he now prepared. Now the angels, fallen angels, when they are standing in front of Satan, they are described that when they were standing in front of Satan, they were very faithful, they were loyal to him, and they were ready to follow his commands, and they appeared like as if the fire of the heaven, it had withered the forest, the trees in the forest, and Satan was preparing himself to speak. The description of the followers of Satan is given that they are very faithful, sincere and loyal, who are ready to obey the orders of their leader, because of whom they are suffering. So this is something very important here, that they were all suffering because of Satan's act. Still they were ready to follow his orders. And now he was preparing to speak, he was preparing to address them all, to speak, whereat their doubled ranks they bend from wing to wing, and half enclosed him round with all his peers. Attention held them mute. Thrice he essayed, and thrice in spite of scorn, tears such as angels weep burst forth. At last words interwove with sighs found out their way. Now what happened? He finally tried to speak, but he could not do so. He had doubled their rank as they bent, and they tried to gather round him. जैसा कि हम अक्सर मैचेस वगैरह में देखते हैं, जिस तरह हॉकी या क्रिकेट के मैच में जब उन्होंने कुछ काउंसलिंग करनी होती है, कुछ एक दूसरे को एडवाइस करना होता है, कुछ डिस्कस करना होता है, वो एक दूसरे के गिर्द इकट्ठे हो जाते हैं और एक सेमी सर्कल शेप बना लेते हैं ताकि वो एक दूसरे से बात कर सकें. तो बिल्कुल इसी तरीके से दीज फॉलन एंजल्स, दे गैदर्ड राउंड दी एंड दे केम क्लोजर टू हिम, and they were all ears, they were all attentive to listen to him. वो उसको सुनने के लिए बिल्कुल मुतवज्जो थे. And 3 times he wanted to say, but it was he could not utter a single word. He was helpless, and finally he was in tears as the angels weep, and finally his words, they mingled, they were mixed up with the sighs. So his words and sighs